Hello, my name is Josh Teagarden, and welcome to Apologetics for Everybody. So I'm actually doing this for a project for my class Christian Apologetics, and so a lot of the research that I've done has been through that class or been taught to me in that class or has been given to me by the professor. The reason I want to call it Apologetics for Everybody is because that's the truth. It's for everybody. You don't need to be a scholar to understand what I'm going to tell you, because by no means am I a scholar. In fact, I wouldn't even put myself anywhere close to that. But I do have a passion to learn, and I have a passion for knowledge, and I have a passion for people like you and me who want to learn more about Jesus but just don't have the time to do the deep research. So on the first video I'm doing, we're diving right into something real deep, and that's the problem of evil. And so what is the problem of evil? So the problem of evil is simply that. It's an argument against the existence of God because evil exists. Now, when looking at this, there are two major arguments against the existence of God through the problem of evil. And that is the logical argument, and that is the evidential argument. And so when thinking about the logical argument, let's look way back to where, we see it first. So way back in Greek, like ancient Greek times, there was Epicurus, I believe his name was, and he made this idea or this paradox. It's called the Epicurean paradox. And so it says this: is God willing but not able? Then he is not omnipotent. Is he able but not willing? Then he is malevolent. Is he both able and willing? Then whence come evil? Or where does evil come from? And is he neither able nor willing? Then why call him God? So that's beautifully stated, but it's the main idea of the logical argument. And so, since a lot of people don't know about this, let me switch to something that a lot of scholars do know about, and that is the inconsistent triad. Now, this was brought about or created, maybe reformed, by an Australian philosopher with the last name Mackey. So he took the Epicurean paradox and he simplified it and made it a little easier to understand. And it's this: God is all good, he would be willing to get rid of evil. So if God is all good, he would be willing to get rid of evil. And if God is all powerful, then he would be able to get rid of it. Since evil exists, God cannot exist. Now, that is very simply put, but poorly crafted, because it is an argument of necessity, which means that for this to be true, there needs to be absolutely no way that God and evil can coexist. So there can be absolutely no way that God and evil can coexist. Because it's saying that they're a contradiction, that God exists and evil exists is a contradiction. Because one has to be true and one can't, and that they're opposite sides of the spectrum and they can't both be true. And then there's the evidential argument. And it's saying that the existence of evil, in particular intense or unnecessary pain and suffering, makes God's existence unlikely. And so this is not an argument of necessity. In fact, it's just saying that it makes God's existence less possible because of all the evil we see in the world. And this is actually the leading argument when it comes to the problem of evil. And we'll talk about that in another video. And so now that we have an idea of what the problem of evil is, and I'll just go over it again, it is an argument against the existence of God because pain and suffering exist. It's also known as the problem of pain and suffering. but that's what it is. And so right now I want to talk about why we as believers, we as Christians, should consider this or look into this. So often we hear people say, why do good things happen to bad people? Or why do bad things happen to good people? Or he was too young to die. Why would God allow this? And we play the blame game with God because of bad things happening. And so for me, this is something that I have dealt with heavily, with grandparents dying, but more so when one of my best friends passed away from leukemia. At that point, I began to question God. Like, God, why would you do this? How can you allow such a great person to die? And instead of digging into stuff like this and finding out, I played the ignorance game and just said, God has a plan. And so, as believers, instead of blaming God or just blindly following, what we need to do is we need to find out why it is or how it is that this could happen, that bad things could happen to good people, or why God would allow evil to exist. And so that's the end of video 1. I'm just going to go over what we talked about, starting with what is the problem of evil. So the problem of evil, once again, is an argument against the existence of God because pain and suffering exist. Then we went over the logical argument and what that was, saying that Epicurus and his Epicurean paradox and Mackey and his inconsistent triad are the logical argument for why God cannot exist because evil exists. And then we went over the evidential argument, that the fact that there is pain and suffering in the world is evidence against the existence of God. Not that God can't exist, but he most likely doesn't. And then why we as Christians need to look into this. Even just normal, everyday believers, not scholars, not pastors, not small group leaders, just normal, everyday people, believers need to look into this. Let's stop playing the blame game or being comfortable in a life of ignorance. And let's truly look into what God has to offer us through scholarship and theories. Thank you so much.